Welcome back to another video. Today we're doing something a little bit different with a list of my top 20 anime. What makes this list a little bit different is that it only contains anime that I have reviewed in the past, and they are not in order of my personal favoritism, but in order of the scores that I have given them. If you're curious about my scoring system, I have a video describing that linked in the description section below, and I'm not going to talk too long about any of these anime because I have links to reviews of all of them linked in the description section below as well. All of the reviews are spoiler-free except for a few of them. The ones that have spoilers are going to let you know that there are spoilers before you get spoiled to anything, so they're all pretty safe to watch. And if you're curious about why a certain anime isn't here, then it either has not been reviewed by me yet, or its score is not high enough to be here. This list is pretty lenient. I'm just doing this in order to continuously update this list every so often. Getting started with number 20, we have Parasyte, which was an anime that I think it came out last year. This is about basically parasites that take over people, and they're taking over society. They're eating people. It's a pretty fun anime. Go ahead and check it out if you haven't yet. I enjoyed it. Number 19 is Samurai Flamenco, and I'm really wishing I didn't put these in random order within their individual scores here, because I like Parasyte more, but Samurai Flamenco is definitely something for the people that grew up watching the Sentai shows, or really any fan of Sentai shows, as it's basically about this guy who really loves, if you're unfamiliar with Sentai shows, basically like Power Rangers, for example. That's the most popular example. It's basically about a guy who loves those type of shows. He inspires to be a hero like them, so he tries to be one. Unfortunately, the major flaw with this anime is that it doesn't really know what type of story it wants to tell, and it changes its pacing. It changes its whole scope, actually, halfway through the story, and a few other times after that. So, it is kind of weird, but I do recommend at least watching the first few episodes of it. Number 18 is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure from 2012, which contains the first two arcs in the longer ongoing series. Part 1 I enjoyed much more than Part 2. I enjoyed Part 2, but not as much as Part 1. And so far, I'm enjoying Part 3 the most, actually. I'm really loving that. But go ahead and check that one out if you haven't seen it yet. Number 18 is Rainbow. And this is a show about... It's set in post-war Japan, about these kids that are stuck in this jail at first, and then they get out. It's basically about their life. It's a really dramatic anime. Moving on to number 16, we have Den-O Coil, which is really hard to explain briefly, but it's basically a mystery revolving around the lives of these kids that are in this futuristic science fiction world. Number 15 is Turn A Gundam, which is arguably the most beautiful Gundam series that I've ever seen. I love its atmosphere. It's set in a fantasy world and pulls influences from all of the other Gundam from the 80s and 90s, including the first one from 79. Number 14 is Akatsuki no Yona, which is basically this action drama fantasy about this girl who's a princess. Her father gets assassinated, and she goes on the road as she's kicked out of her kingdom, basically, as it's taken over. She's finding these legendary warriors, and she's trying to win back her kingdom. Number 13 is one of my favorite comedies, that is Devil is a Part-Timer, which is basically about Sadao Mao. He's kicked out of his demon world, and he's forced into the regular world, where he works at a McDonald's, which is basically McDonald's. It's a really funny anime. I definitely recommend that you check it out. Number 12 is Death Note. This is something that everyone is familiar with. I don't need to talk much about this. Moving on to number 11, we have Space Runaway Ideon, which is a Tomino mecha from the early 80s. This came out directly after the original Gundam series, and it is credited as being one of the influences for Neon Genesis Evangelion. Honestly, this is a bit hard to watch, but I think it's worth it if you're interested in the history of anime or just mecha anime in general. The story is actually really good, but it's just so long, and then it eventually got canceled, and then it ended off with movies that you really need to watch in order to have the complete experience. My review on this is actually a bit outdated, honestly, but it's pretty much my accurate feelings on it still. Moving on to number 10, we have Monster, which is a mystery drama with psychological elements. This is basically about a doctor who's traveling Germany in order to find one of his previous patients who's become a serial killer. Really don't want to say more than that. I really enjoyed it. I had some issues with its pacing in my review. I wanted to say that these elements, basically, where your protagonist travels across Macross Germany. There are a lot of episodes where I really enjoyed it, but I felt that they really did little for the plot. So, having said that, it's still something that I really do recommend that everybody out there go ahead and watch, or probably read the manga. The manga might have better pacing to it. Number 9 is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Don't need to really get into that. Everybody knows about the series already. Number 8 is Kemonozume by the creator of Tatami Galaxy. And I have this as a 9. My review gives it a 10 just because I changed it, just because the way I feel about it after having seen it a while back. But this is a really crazy action comedy drama. It's really weird. It's basically about these human-eating monsters, and then you have these samurai that hunt them, and it tells this Romeo and Juliet story about one of the monsters that falls in love with one of the samurai that hunt them. I really loved it, and also it's got this really unique art style. Number 7 was my former number 1 anime of all time, Welcome to the NHK. I recently reviewed this. It's also pretty popular, don't need to say much, but it is about a recluse who's agoraphobic. He's afraid of people, never leaves his apartment, and basically it's the adventure of him being reacquainted with some people from his past as well as some new people as well. Number 6 is Kino's Journey, a new personal favorite of mine, which is basically about this girl who travels from country to country for 3 days at a time, and each country represents its own theme, so each episode, it's very episodic, and each episode contains a different message, basically, or numerous messages. Moving on to number 5, we have another anime that needs no introduction, which is Neon Genesis Evangelion. A bit of a disclaimer, though, this is number 5 on the list because I include the movie End of Evangelion with it, as I see it being the full experience, basically like I did with Space Runaway Ideon with their final movies. Moving on to number 4, we have Kaiba, which is one of my newer favorites. This is another anime by the creator of Tatami Galaxy, and it's really beautiful. It's the most peaceful anime I've ever seen, I think. It's one of these series that it starts off and you don't know what you're watching until about episode 8 or 9 when it gives you the details, and then once you finish, you start over again. It's basically one of these. Moving on to number 3, we have Macross, which is the original Macross, which I would not confuse with Robotech because they're actually very different. I would recommend watching Macross instead, but Macross is a very well-constructed space war drama and romance anime. I really loved it. Number 2 is Serial Experiments Lain, and it really needs little introduction with this. And number 1, moving on to number 1, we have a series by my favorite anime director, that is Satoshi Kon, which is Paranoia Agent, which basically takes a hard look at people's lives and how people focus on pop icons and forget about reality, basically things like that. It's really interesting. I highly recommend that you watch that. So anyways, that is my list of my top 20 anime as they are currently reviewed and rated. So anyways, thank you for watching. Hopefully this video helped you and find a few new anime that you can enjoy. If it did, then please be sure to subscribe as well as share this video with some of your other friends that are anime fans as well. Let me know in the comments section below which are your top 10 or top 20 favorite anime of all time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.